from Gillette, and I'm running for the United States Senate for the seat currently held by John Barrasso, hopefully very temporarily. When I was very young, I was, I think, 4 years old. I come from a large family, a family of 9, and when I was 4, the Nixon-Humphrey debate was going on, and the election. And my father was a lifetime Republican. My mother was a lifetime Democrat, and we had 9 kids, and so there was lots of vying back and forth as to who would get the majority rule at the dinner table. So I was 4 years old and sitting at the dinner table chatting about politics, and my mother really liked Hubert Humphrey. My dad, I think, voted for Nixon in '68, but not '72. My dad was kind of a middle-of-the-road Republican. And so thinking that hearing all this about presidents and that sort of thing, I decided to, interpose myself, being 4 and self-involved. And I said, well, gee, Mom, do you think I can be president of the United States? And she was cutting her fish stick or whatever we were eating that night, and she looked up and said, no, Nick, you can't. So, rather plain-spoken woman. However, she's 81 years old, and I checked with her in late 2007, and she said, however, that I could be a United States Senator. So I'm happy to get her early endorsement. I've been an attorney for 18 years up in Gillette. I've had my own practice. I wanted to go into private practice. My dad worked for Exxon for 35 years and then opened an office supply store with my mother when he was about 50 years old. So I've always been interested in small business, and so when I got out of law school from the University of Wyoming, I wanted to open my own practice and have been in private practice. And so I've kind of learned firsthand after putting myself through school. You can imagine being the youngest of 9, when it came to going to college, the trough was a little dry, and so I worked every job imaginable up in Campbell County. I poured concrete, did some roughnecking, that sort of thing. But I've always been interested in small business, and I've always been interested in representing individuals, which is what I've wanted to do. And as I have watched the cartwheeling of our country under the Bush administration, I decided that what Wyoming needs is not a rubber stamp up in Washington that just looks to the Republican National Committee for their vote, but we need an advocate. Wyoming needs an advocate in Washington, and I've decided I can be that advocate for Wyoming in Washington, and that's why I decided to run for the United States Senate. I've only been out a little more than a month after kind of debating back and forth and wondering whether I could be good enough or not here, if I could take him on. But it's been a wonderful experience going door to door, and I've learned many things. But I think that there's some critical issues that are facing the United States and that Wyoming will get swept up in if we don't have a firm advocate from the state of Wyoming that takes on the tough issues, takes on the tough matters of the day in Washington, and just doesn't look for a national party to lead their way. That's not to say that I'm not a lifelong Democrat. I've always believed in the Democratic Party, but I also believe that issues need to be taken on with respect to what's best for the country, what's best for the state. And that doesn't always mean just being a monkey and stamping what your party seems to think is best. I think we need to send a man to Washington that will take on the issues and the tough issues. Well, what are some of those tough issues? Well, it's pretty easy. I mean, if you watch the news, is that the economy right now is at the brink. And I believe that because of the fiscal policies of the Bush administration and of the Republican Party, our economy is on the brink for a host of reasons. The energy policy, I don't know if you guys recall, but the energy policy that was adopted by the Bush administration was roughly written up by Enron, and we now know how Enron did. And so our energy policy here in the United States is a mess. And the thing about our energy policy is that because special interests have hijacked the energy policy here in the United States, they're not taking into consideration that if you're going to have an energy policy, it better be in conjunction with an environmental policy, and it better be in conjunction with an economic policy. And that if you just try to do any of those 1 or 2 following the special interests, all 3 will fail. So one of the tough issues that I think needs to be adopted or that needs to be attacked is this idea of an energy policy that considers our environment and also considers our economy. I have a brother-in-law that mines coal up in Gillette, and clearly if there's an energy policy that is not coal-friendly, a national energy policy that's not coal-friendly, there are going to be massive layoffs in Campbell County and many other counties here in Wyoming. So an environmental policy that was not coal-friendly, of course, would have the same effect. So our energy policy, I think, is the federal government needs to take the bull by the horns and invest money in clean coal technology. There's lots of reasons to do this. It's not just the self-interest of Campbell County or of Wyoming in general, but it's a global interest. Even if the United States quit burning coal today and we quit driving cars today, the global warming problem would still be in existence because India, China, Brazil are coming online with record pace. I read recently that 650 coal-fired power plants are going to go online in just China in the next 4 years. So that, I think, the United States has always been in a leadership position, and we have to take the lead in clean coal technology. Right now, it's a paltry sum that gets invested in carbon sequestration. It's a paltry sum that gets invested on clean coal technology. It's good for Wyoming, it's good for the United States, and it's also good for the world if we take the lead on that, and that takes investment. And just going up there and voting the party line, I don't think is going to get that job done. We need an advocate in Wyoming that takes on that issue. The second issue that affects the economy in an enormous amount, and I don't think gets much play, is really how much money we are currently borrowing from the Chinese to rebuild Iraq that we broke. We spend between $2 and $3 billion a week that is going straight out of our treasury that we're having to borrow on the credit of our children and our grandchildren, and it's going straight to Iraq. And this is why the dollar is in a free fall. This is a reason that the dollar is starting to look like the peso. I mean, it seems to me, and I know that the Republicans get all fired up about the immigration problem, we better be careful about building a wall, because after a while, if we allow the United States dollar to go down, we might be going to Mexico for jobs. And so this money going out in droves, not to mention the human cost. I had a nephew that has done 3 terms. He's in the Marine Corps, 3 terms in Iraq. We can't spill any more blood there, and we just can't spend that sort of money. The other thing that puts our economy at the brink is the outlandish healthcare costs. We have to get the healthcare crisis under control. My opponent, John Barrasso, voted against the S-chip, and so his belief is that he's worried about his malpractice insurance premiums, but he doesn't think that young children in Wyoming or across the United States should have insurance at all. And that's the kind of partisan bickering that we do not need. What we need is to solve this problem. I saw in a program with David Gergen where he proposed that the Senate appoint a blue ribbon commission that takes into consideration economy, costs, and coverage issues all together, and get enough senators on board so that you kind of depoliticize the healthcare debate. Because that, along with the Iraq war and the increase in energy costs, are putting our economy on the brink, and Wyoming will get swept up in that. I know Wyoming's good right now, and the economy's good in Wyoming. I live in Gillette. Certainly the economy is good in Gillette. But, you know, it was only 2 years ago that gas was about $1.40. When President Bush took office, a barrel of oil was roughly $36. I think it closed at $116 today. The average person simply cannot continue to survive with those sort of costs. And we're starting to see that with inflation in food. We're seeing it in inflation in housing across the board. So the bottom line is I think that probably, and I'm somewhat of a student of history, I think not since FDR took office in 1932 did the United States face the myriad of issues. And the idea that we're going to continue to do business as usual in Washington, just the business of going up there and voting the party line and building your party and voting for special interest, that has to come to an end. Wyoming needs an advocate. The United States needs an advocate. And I would be that tough advocate for you if you decide to vote for me.